This is Nadisha in Chicago, and you are watching my channel Knowledge for Quality of Life. Friends, as I promised last week that I'm going to be starting something new. Not that I'm done with the healthcare, but today I want to start something related to finance. And by no means I'm a financial expert or financial representative. This is a story of how I mitigated over the last 35, 40 years. And I'm leaving this footprint as a guide so that people who are looking at it uh, or considering it, particularly the young folks, the young professionals, they can chart out their future based on these basic concepts. So today I'm going to be starting on financial topics such as you know uh, IRAs or 401k or future growth of our investments. Um, and these are the concerns I had actually when I was starting my career, that I was starting my family, and I started the career in June of '89. So I had certain questions at that time, that, of course, my family, I'm starting a family. I need to protect myself. If God forbid something happens to me, because I was the main breadwinner of the family. And I thought about insurance. I looked at it in very detail of what are the types of insurance and all that. So I have gone through a lot of things as a consumer, which one would need to plan and to rely on in the financial arena. So insurance is one of them. Protection of the family, your future, retirement planning, your living state or will. Many things came across as an individual, and I have gone through almost all of them. And what are the tools and nitty-gritty things I dealt with? I'm going to be sharing on a periodic basis here. So by no means this is a cookie cutter thing, but these are my way of understanding things, how it panned out over time for me and my family, because I had some perception that when I'm starting my career in 1989, of course one day I'm going to be aging, and I need to slow down, and I need to retire, maybe do something else on a part-time basis. But I have to generate certain amount of income so that I can live comfortably without compromising my living standard. So all these questions I had in my mind in those time frame, and the first thing I looked at it is something that which each and every one of us, regardless of where we are living on the planet, we go through it, whether we know it or not. And it is something which is very subtle. We don't realize it until it hits us. It's one of those things that, we don't appreciate something which we have, but when things are not in that category, then we realize that, what's going on here. So this is I call it, it's a silent robbery. Basically, it erodes the purchasing power of my wallet, your wallet, and everyone's wallet. And we cannot file a complaint in the police as a report of stealing. If you guessed it, you are right. If you are thinking about the inflation, first thing I needed to understand that how this data works at a core, and how you can look at this data, and this is ongoing basis over the last 150 years. We have all the data, and you can use that data to project certain things, and that's what I did. So I was starting my career in 1989, and I looked at it that I projected that next 35 or 40 years I'll be slowing down and retiring from my main career, let's say, how much money I'll be making at that time. And whatever the gap is, I need to fill that gap. I'm going to lose my purchasing power over time. Because every year we have this inflation which erodes our purchasing power. Whether it's 2%, 3%, 4%, 6%, whatever it is. And now this is not a constant number, okay? This varies, and there are a lot of things which comprises of that CPI, which we call it Consumer Price Index. It's a core gauge of the inflation, and it has healthcare, it has energy, it has food and groceries, and it has gasoline that we pump at the gas stations, electricity, you name it. There are everything which makes our life running for whatever it is. If you go to the BLS website, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it lines out all the items. So individual items have their own core inflation, okay? And then you have a composite inflation, including all the items. So for instance, if you look at the healthcare cost, probably, it's running maybe 3 or 4 times more than the core inflation, So, but there are certain things which are very, subtle, which doesn't have that much higher inflation. For instance, sending your kids to college, the college education, it's increasing at the rate of 2.5 to 3 times the core inflation. So there are certain elements in the core inflation index which is very high, and there are certain things which are low, and you are getting somewhere in between. So my job was at that time to look at it, because I was projecting 35 years down the line beyond 1989. So I said that let's see what happened in the last 35 years or 50 years, and so on and so forth. So I started crunching the data. In those days, back in 1989, the internet was not that great or not available. So I started hitting the books, Consumer Price Index, those periodicals which comes on a quarterly basis, and each and every public library has it. But you don't need it anymore because everything is on your fingertips. How to use that's the key. So I'm going to be sharing some snippets. Of course, the vlog is very short and in a timely manner. I cannot share everything, but I'm going to give you a gist so that you understand that how things work, okay? And I'm going to be sharing the website as well. So let me share my screen with you. So what you see here is, as I said, that I was looking at the next 35 years. So I needed to look back actually 35 years, that what happened 35 years prior to 1989. So I looked at the core inflation. So the total inflation from 1954 to 89, what it panned out actually. So this is a cumulative price change. I'm going to go in numbers so that you can understand. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible so a common man can understand or a common person can understand. And so this is the cumulative percentage change in the last 35 years from 54 to 89, okay? Now this, I try to calculate here that average inflation rate. So if I were to convert this number 360.97 as a cumulative into a annualized compounded rate, so it gives me 4.46% annually compounded. So this 4.46% was the average inflation in the last 35 years between 1954 to 89. The converted amount was, of course, 4.61. So a base value of dollar, the dollar value, whatever the purchasing power was in 1954 for dollar, if I need to keep the same purchasing power in 1989, after 35 years later, I needed to have $4.61 to buy the same goods and services which I was buying with $1 in 1954. Okay, so it is more than 4.5 times. Okay, so the price difference is 4.61 minus 1. So price difference was $3.61. Now, if you want to convert this number for $100, you multiply both sides by 100. So this is going to give you a 461 for each $100. And for 1,000, you just multiply this by 1,000, and so on and so forth. So, for instance, if somebody was making in 1954, let's say, $1,000 salary, of course, you need to multiply this by 1,000, and that's the salary you needed to make in 1989 to maintain the same standard of living. That's what it means. Now, CPI index in 1954 was 26.9, and CPI index, this is the benchmark index which we track at BLS website, and this is 124%. Now, inflation in 1954 was 0.75% merely only, and inflation in 1989 was 4.82%. Okay, so as I said, that inflation doesn't stay constant number. It varies, and it depends on many factors. How the Fed is governing the monetary policy to cool off the inflation, how the geopolitical situation is there, how the supply and demand is there, how the growth of the economy is there, the GDP, and all these factors plays a role in the inflation rate. So in 1954, $1, as I said, that the worth of $1 equals to 1989 worth of $4.61. Now, if you were to see that, in the calculation form, so I put it here that this is which we learned in Basic Economics 101, that future worth factor. This is the formula works to crunch these numbers. So F is nothing but future value of money. P is nothing but the present value of the money. And 1 plus I is the rate of return. In this case, it's inflation. And N is the number of years. So I started plugging the numbers here. I just wanted to show here you guys that, how it ends up 4.46% annualized inflation in 35 years from 1954 to 1989. So I started plugging the numbers here, and then I solved, because I is the unknown, because this is the inflation number which we are targeting. So I solved this equation, by 1 plus I, 4.61, 1/35th root, and then you use your calculator and calculate the I value. So I got 4.46%. So it means that when I was planning, I needed to figure it out that at least 4.5%, 4 to 6%, because I don't know that it could be in next 35 years beyond 89, it could be 6%. So I assumed that to be safe, it could be either between 4 to 6%. Okay, that's my bandwidth was that inflation may run 4 to 6%. Okay, and based on that assumptions, I planned everything. Now, I wanted to show you in the next slide that what it actually happened, beyond 1989 to 2024. So same thing, cumulative price change was 152.84%. Average inflation rate in the 35 years between 89 and 24 was 2.69% only. Now, I assumed 4 to 6% as a target. Even though if I have assumed 4%, then I needed to have at least my salary which I was earning in 1989 to keep that inflation, to have the same purchasing power. So now think about it here. I'm going to take a pause, and I'm going to introduce a term which is known as rule of compounding, power of compounding, the rule of 72. You may have heard this many times before, or for some folks it may be new. Rule of compounding or rule of 72 is nothing, but it says that if you have a certain amount of dollar, and if you want to double that dollar, okay, double that amount, if you calculate the rate of return, if you take the future value, if you take a $1 and if you take that $1 to be converted into a $2, all right, and you assume certain rate of return, like 2% or 4% or 6% or 8%, then if you divide that by your rate of return, then the result will give you a number of years to double your money. Okay, so 72, if you take the 72 number and divide by the rate of return, okay, basically this is the same principle. This is the same formula applies there as well. So if you take the number 72 and divide it by the rate of return, the result, the quotient is going to tell you that it requires those many number of years to double your money. So it means that if I take, in the previous slide, 4%, let's say if I assume 4% inflation, so it means that, if I take according to rule of 72, if I divide that 72 by 4, I'm going to get 72 divided by 4, I'm going to get 18. So it means that my money is going to double in 18 years. Okay, so it means that in 18 years, my $1 is going to be $2, and then in another 18 years, that $2 is going to be $4. Okay, so it means that whatever salary I was earning, okay, back in 1954, let's say, whoever was earning the salary in 1954, they needed to have 4 times the salary back in 1989 to have the same standard of living. Okay, that's what it means. So now come back to this in my case scenario from 89 to 24. So I needed to assume, so I took the safety number as 4%. So it means that I needed to grow my salary 4 times at least to have the same standard of living which I was living in 1989. Okay, so this is the concept of inflation. So if you understand this inflation, then it's going to be much easier to plan for your future retirement, to prepare, because mostly folks don't think when they are working, because we have all the vigor and energy. We think that we don't think in that route, in that arena, that one day we are going to retire, or one day we are going to need money, but our salaries don't increase that kind of with the throughout the career, that it's going to keep up with the inflation. And sometimes you hear this thing that people, when they retire, and of course there is no Social Security which is going to keep paying you with that kind of increment on a yearly basis, and the safety of the Social Security is also questionable when we will retire, because it depends on the flux of folks who's going to be taking the retirement benefits, and how it's going to the trust fund, how it's going to behave, how it's going to fund, how it's going to influx and outflux, because whatever the money is coming into the trust fund, how it's going to outflow, and what are the rates, how long it's going to last, the actuarial calculations. So those things are very crucial to understand. Let me stop share here, and come back to that. So these are the questions and queries I had in my mind, and basically that's how one has to plan. That once you understood that what are the numbers, what are you looking at it, and how you're going to plan for so that you are comfortable without encroaching your purchasing power in the years ahead. And this is just a core concept. So the number one thing is rule of 72. Let me reiterate again. Rule of 72 tells you that if you take the 72 number and divide it by the inflation or rate of return or whatever the interest rate is, the result is, number of years to double your money. So for instance, if you take 72 divided by 3, that's going to give you 24 years to double your money. If you take 4, it's going to take 18 years to double your money. If you're going to take 6 to double your money, it's going to require 12 years to double your money. Okay, and so on and so forth. Now, we will look at it, that once we establish that, okay, I need to have my salary grow by this much in this year, how we're going to tackle that, how we're going to mitigate that, what are the options we can do it. Okay, that was my question actually back in '89, and that's how I crafted everything. And I'm going to share you core data. So there's nothing, future projections that what happened prior to '89, as I said in the inflation. So that's why I took 1954 to 1989, and then I projected 1989 to 2024. Now, people who are in this time in 2025, they need to look at it 35, 40 years back, and then go forward 35, 40 years forward. And that's how you should plan. Okay. Now, leave some room for conservative assumptions, because you don't want to be really at the borderline that if you fall short, then what. All right, so if you are a little bit conservative in your assumptions, better for you. I hope that this gives you some understanding, and next week we will look at it, that how I mitigated, what are the options I had, and we can go from there. See you then next week.